Hey, my name is St. John. Actually, that's not my real name. My real name is just John. There's a story behind that, which I'm sure I'll get to at some point. All I'll say is it's not religiously related like it sounds. It's actually related to, of all things, video game music podcasts. So, a story for another time. Anyway, today is my 44th birthday. And while in reality, this means this is my 44th birthday as an autistic and ADHD person, it's my first birthday knowing that I am autistic and ADHD. And so, doing a sort of vlog for my lived experiences as an autistic and ADHD person is something that I have been planning on doing ever since I got my diagnosis last year. I've been hemming and hawing, you know, a little afraid actually of stories that fellow vloggers like I Am Mind Blind uh, tell me about comments. The comment section being can get pretty rough, and I'm probably not as thick-skinned as I should be, and so that thought really scared me off. But I'd committed to doing at least one video. Do one video. If it goes great, keep going. If it goes horribly, then I did one video. Also, this is completely unscripted. I just totally off the fly. If this thing gets legs, I kind of envision a thing where I'll have videos that are unscripted, where it's raw and unfiltered and just me being my, autistic self, and ones where it is scripted, where it's a lot more professional, a lot more polished, and maybe sometimes on the same subject. Maybe, I pick a particular subject, maybe RSD or whatever, and there's an unscripted version that looks like this, and then a scripted version where I'm talking in my smooth radio affect and I'm reading a script and do better research and make better points and all that stuff. Also, I apologize for the really poor lighting. I'm down in the studio, in the studio room in my basement. This is where I do my podcasts. I do podcasts on video game music under the name Nerd Noise Radio, and I do them down here. But I just, the wife and the kids are upstairs, and I thought I would sneak downstairs to do this real quick. I've I've already made a lot of discoveries in the time since I got my diagnosis, even though that is 5 months ago in 3 days, so very recently. And I have a lot of thoughts to share. So there definitely is content for videos. It's just whether I can stay organized and disciplined and not get, not yeep and get scared off by the comment section. I will say for this first video that my diagnosis, and I've run into people who have gotten autism and ADHD or OCD diagnoses, and for them it's been very rough. For them it's been a very sad or scary or traumatic experience. I think of Gregory Scott, someone I've met on Threads, and this has been kind of a rough journey for him. I hope it gets better. And then, you've got big names like Molly's ADHD Mayhem who make it clear this is a really rough experience for them as well. But I will say, at least so far, maybe this is the voice of naivety. I'm only 5 months away from my diagnosis after all. Um, Maybe this is the voice of naivety on my part. But for me, it's been an overwhelmingly positive, happy experience. I've always felt like I'm from another planet. I've always felt like I was on a different train than everyone else, a parallel train, close enough that we could look out the window and wave at each other. Sometimes we could even shout things across to each other, but never on the same train. I would understand things in 3D that no one else either seemed to get or no one cared about. I would fixate on things. I would notice all these little tiny nuances and details about particular things. But then social engagement would be a mystery to me. I would only very barely understand what was going on around me in social situations. It's like I coined the term social cataracts. I'm not completely socially blind, but I don't see clearly the way your neurotypical person does. And so, but it never made sense. I just felt like a weird broken creature, and now I know Matt Ricardo didn't coin this term, but he's where I heard it from, so I give him the credit by proxy. I give him the credit anyway. It's really great to finally realize you're a perfectly normal zebra rather than a broken horse, the broken horse you always thought you were. And so it's very liberating. It's understanding all the things that never made sense before. It's seeing things you haven't thought about in 30 years through new eyes. And there's a lot of self-compassion and self-forgiveness that comes from that. I I literally cried, and I even have a few times since. When referring to myself, I said, this means I can finally stop being mean to that weird kid now. And so for me, it's primarily a joyous thing. It feels like a 43-year chapter of my life ended, and now a new chapter has begun. A chapter with greater hope of understanding. And, even if nothing else positive comes out of this diagnosis in my life, then just having that understanding and that compassion and all that, that's already a tremendous thing to have. That's already a tremendous gain. And I think more things will come from it. I think I'll learn I'll learn ways to cope with the world and make myself easier for the world to cope with and be able to move forward that way. Maybe I find some niche that I can turn into something more gainful. I'm employed. I've been in this job for almost 10 years, but I'd call myself underemployed. And I don't want to get into details on that, but you know, maybe maybe I find a niche that can turn into something more gainful going forward. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I want vlogging to be my full-time gig. If this thing takes off, maybe it can be something that I make a little money on the side and put money on. But I'm also afraid. I also don't know that I even want to monetize, because then it becomes an obligation. Then you run into PDA. The thing about doing the podcast is I'm dealing with the video game music podcast, Nerd Noise Radio. I'm dealing with music I don't own the copyright to. And so, video game music isn't very policed. There hasn't been a crackdown. But because I don't have the copyright to this music, I deliberately don't bring in a single penny. I don't even have Patreon. Like, I've literally made $0.00 off Nerd Noise Radio over the past 7 years that I've been doing it. Because if a crackdown comes, I I've never made money. They basically, I mean, my audience is only, 100 to 200 people. That's not big enough to take me to court over, to sue me over, as an example, right? So realistically, all they could really do to me is just tell me to knock it off, and then I walk away and do something else. But since there's no money involved in Nerd Noise Radio, there's not that kind of obligation pressure. And so it doesn't typically run me into PDA because there isn't this obligation on it. And I don't know that I want there to be a PDA obligation on this AuDHD adventure. So I may never monetize it either. But anyway, like I said, this is totally unscripted, so there's going to be a lot of rambling. I just thought my 44th birthday, my first birthday as a known autistic, a confirmed autistic ADHD person. I also found out last year that I've got some interesting little bits of ethnicity that I never realized. I've got a really tiny amount of West African, a really tiny amount of North African, a little bit of Coptic Egyptian, a little bit of Finnish, a little bit of Spanish Portuguese, and then the one that really blew me away, Ashkenazi Jewish. And so, while I don't envision, I can't envision a scenario where would become religiously Jewish. I do kind of feel like leaning into the ethnicity side a little bit, and I guess at least Jewish. So, this isn't the birthday that I become a quote unquote autistic Jew, but it is the first birthday that I celebrate knowing that I have been this thing all along. And so, it's a milestone birthday for that regard. It's a monumental birthday for those reasons. And so I thought, if I'm only going to just do one AuDHD video, my 44th birthday is a great time to do it. And again, I apologize for the really low audio video quality of this. I'm doing this on my phone, in a dark room in the basement. So if this thing gets any legs, I will, as soon as it's feasible, start doing better audio-visual production work. I'll probably use the same Shure SM7B that I use for Nerd Noise Radio rather than my phone. And, hopefully it's not all muffly because my finger being under the phone blocking the microphone or something stupid like that. But for now, I'm going to call this quits. And maybe this is video 1 of 1. Maybe this is video 1 of 1 million. I don't know. We'll find out together. But in the meanwhile, this is St. John with AuDHD signing off.